Are you wanting to learn to fly, but you're from another country? Let's find out what kind of questions you might need to have answered on this Taking Off podcast. Hello and welcome to the Taking Off podcast. I'm Dan Milliken.
And I'm Christy Wong.
Okay, Christy, you've taken my staff and
Your Steph?
yeah. So here with us, she's playing on words there because we have Steph with us who works for my company, Serendipitous Films. Steph, you are a graphics person. Your stuff is just amazing. We just recently had the Airplanes and Coffee open for the Arrowverse original TV show.
It looks good.
I showed it to Christy.
It looks so good.
So sis, thanks for coming.
Oh, no, thank you actually for bringing me here.
So Dan basically pulled me aside and said, okay, so we have a problem. You know, you keep trying to steal my people away.
Right.
And I was really confused. And then he tells me, well, you know, our editor, Steph, she's gotten really interested in airplanes. She, in fact, has been doing a lot of the editing for Taking Off and for some of the other airplane stuff that you're doing. And as it turns out, airplanes are cool.
Yes, I can't deny. I can't deny it.
So Steph, you came to me wanting to know how to, how to fly, and what are the requirements and what are first steps and what drove you to do that?
To be honest, working here.
Okay, because you get exposed to a lot of aviation.
So then this is your fault.
Okay.
Yeah, in
we'll
a way.
start there.
Yeah, because if I go back in the past, like I will never imagine myself like thinking about, oh, let's go and do an airplane. No, not even.
Okay.
I thought about it.
So first question. Okay, you have a beautiful accent.
Oh, thank you.
That's not a Texan accent. Where are you from?
I am from Venezuela.
Really?
Yes.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay.
So South America. Just
Yeah, and when Steph applied for the job and we interviewed and everything else, it says on the resume Estefania, but you did not want me to call you Estefania.
No.
You said no, call me Steph.
Because everybody, like in English, it's like they miss the accent in the I, so it's like Estefania.
Oh, they say that, or is it supposed to be?
It's supposed to be like that, and so
Estefania.
everybody Stefania.
I messed up.
So it's okay. It's
That's why.
Everybody messed up.
Estefania.
Yes.
That is so pretty,
if I had
though.
said, I can call you Estefania if you want, but you would not have wanted. Or
No,
do.
just call me Steph.
She's like, it's just easier that way.
Yeah.
Yes, and which is the English version, Stephanie, I guess.
That's
Do
Yeah,
people
but
call you
fair.
Stephanie, but you don't like it?
Just people I don't know, I just call me Stephanie or Steph. Like, yeah.
Yeah, okay, I can see that. Do they do flight training in Venezuela?
Probably, yes, I believe so. But it's very uncommon to think about it because when Dan was telling me about that here in the U.S., you don't need a permission from somebody else or airport. Or, like a paperwork to go and fly somewhere. That was like kind of like, I don't think in my country is like that, I
Right.
think there's some requirements even harder and to follow. And that's why, like, wow, so you can fly here and there and like, in the middle of nowhere with no tower control and nothing happened. Like,
The freedom that we have.
yeah, the
here to
freedom
fly.
that you have here, like, I don't think it's the same in my country, especially in the place that I used to grow up. It's there's a lot of mountains, so it's a very dangerous place. Like, just experts can land in there because it's in the middle of the city.
Wow.
So we have a small airport there, and just experts could land there. And for an accident that I showed you before, I think,
Yes.
Dan, I showed it to you. Due to the accident, they had to close that airport because nobody,
Wow.
for the good sake of, around
Okay.
the people.
Okay, so your very first time to ride in the plane, talk about that.
Yeah, it was with, we were gonna go to this conference, I think, in Arizona, and you told
In
me,
Phoenix,
in Phoenix, and actually, I got in an airplane before that time,
Yes.
but that was a very long time ago. So I was like 12 years old.
And that was a big airplane, right?
No, really. It was
Oh, you got
a
a
small
small-
airplane.
Oh.
Yeah, it was a small airplane, but that was the only time. Yeah, the first time when I was 12, we went to an island, Los Roques in Venezuela. It's an amazing place. And it's in the airport, it's very small, so just airplanes can get there. And we took the airplane and it was shaking everywhere for 30 minutes or so. I kind of had that stuck in my mind. So Dan told me, oh, no, you're going to feel vibration, stuff like that. Yeah, no worries. I know. I know.
And so what happened is that we had an S Films job, a corporate job, where we were covering a conference in Phoenix. And so I was taking a couple of crew people, including Steph, who was going to be doing our editing there. And so we loaded up in Lola, my 210, with a lot of gear, and we went. And what were your impressions of that leg out?
Was it
I mean,
scary?
A little bit when Dan told me that I have to put like a little oxygen just in case, like, we go to a high, like very high. It's like, okay, so, I just have the picture of the Hollywood movies. It's like,
Right.
it's
okay,
like,
I didn't
I'm
realize
gonna
that.
die so, or something. So if I don't put my little, oxygen or something like that. So I was more, like scared about that because it's like, I have to pay attention whenever he's putting something here. So like, I have to put it. And I remember whenever it was shaking everywhere, like I was just asleep. I just went to sleep. No, if I can't do anything, I'm just going to sleep. That's my solution.
At the higher altitudes, it's easier to go to sleep.
Yeah,
gonna
and I remember I was kind of asleep, and you were talking to the other guy, the co-pilot. I don't remember his name. And you were putting the thing back when we were coming back here to Texas, and you were putting the little oxygen, and he asked you, "Hey, should we tell Steph?" It's like, "No, she's sleeping. She's gonna be fine." No, I heard you. I was like, "No, I'm gonna put that thing." I don't want to.
We came back at flight level.
Flight
210.
level. As soon as you said flight level, I was like, okay.
We were at flight level 210. We had a great. I went from El Paso to Fort Worth in under 2 hours.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
In a 210.
Yeah.
Well, and admittedly, a Cessna 210 is not a great airplane for doing discovery flights in. It's a very
Absolutely not.
It's a very complex aircraft. Now it meets Dan's mission. And it's
It does.
great.
Yeah.
Well, and this was by no means a discovery flight for Steph. So the other
Right.
guy, the other crew person that she was talking about, is somebody who works in video who also had gotten his pilot's license but had not flown after his check ride a year before. And so I was trying to give him some experience up front. So Steph got what I call first class, which is the back seat, because I removed the middle seats and you got all this leg room.
Yep.
You know what? I think I've been in Lola in that configuration before. I can attest that it's pretty nice.
You don't get a flight attendant walking down the aisles.
I was going to say, especially when Dan serves you food and drinks, that's the best
But
part.
I do have snacks back there.
Okay, well, that's good. So Dan reached out to me a couple weeks ago and said, hey, Steph, she does the editing. Yeah, I know Steph. I stop by and say hi to the editors when I'm here in the
She
studio.
created the Airline Pilot Life with Christy animation logo. If you go to our YouTube channel and watch that, that's her work.
That's amazing. See, I did not realize that was her. You showed me what she did with the airplanes and coffee intro, and I thought, wow, that's actually really good. So Dan reached out and said, hey, would you be willing to give Steph a discovery flight? And of course, my first response was, of course.
Well, and I knew you'd say that. Here's what happened. I'm at my desk right behind the camera, and Steph comes in and kind of like can't get the request out because she's maybe scared to ask or something like that, or how to get a discovery flight.
Yeah.
That's really what she was asking. And I said, oh, if you're looking, because most places, you can go anywhere for a discovery flight, and this is good information for everybody out there. If you want a discovery flight, you call a local school and you schedule it, and it is going to cost something. It's not going to cost the price of a full-on lesson, because it's usually shorter, but you will probably, most schools will put you in the pilot seat and let you do some of the flying. And that's what a discovery flight is. So Steph had actually, after all the stuff and all the aviation on her own, this is what I really like, by the way. It's one thing for me to push on some of my crew people, hey, you should learn to fly.
Right.
Okay, I've done that. But what happened is I just took Steph for some rides, and now she's coming to me saying, I want to learn to fly.
That
and
is
I think
really cool.
that's really cool. And so I was like, let me call Christy.
Yeah, exactly. So Dan calls me and says, hey, can you get Steph up? And I said, absolutely. So we haven't done it yet.
No, as a matter of fact, it's going to happen today of this recording, and we've got lightning and thunderstorms right outside the window.
Yeah, the North Texas spring is upon us, and we're definitely getting the storms and stuff. So unfortunately, it doesn't look like we're going to get to fly today, but we are going to fly. And I know Steph has a lot of questions.
All right.
That she's written down. I know she was taking notes and whatnot. And I thought, you know what? There's probably a lot of people out there in her situation where they're in the very early stages of wanting to learn how to fly. And I thought, what a great way. Let's just bring Steph on and we'll let her ask her questions. We'll answer them. And maybe there are viewers out there in our audience that can benefit from this conversation. So thank you so much for...
No, actually, thank you.
All right, Steph, all yours. Ask some questions.
One of the things that, for example, like, even though I ask you the question, like, how to do a discovery flight, behind scenes, looking for, because as an international, and English not being my second language, my first language. So, I mean, just listening English with the microphone, like,
right.
That's something that scares me a little bit. It's like, okay, so I don't know if I will be able to do this, but at least just gonna try.
Look, you are doing so much better at English than I do in Spanish. And not to brag, but I've been doing Duolingo now for like 200 days. I'm on a streak and I'm terrible. So your English is way better than my Spanish, first and foremost. But the English requirement, it's just, can you speak English proficiently? And so far, the answer is yes. There is a difference with aviation English, which, to be honest, is a little bit of a different language, but that's something that you will learn as you go. And honestly, I have nothing but respect for students that come here from other countries with English as a second language. And they have to learn not only English, but now they're learning aviation English. So I highly respect that you're willing to jump into this.
Yeah, so that's my first question, like, will be like, as an international, what will be like the requirements, for this particular profile to get, the license in aviation, or I don't know if that's the right term.
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to depend on what school you go to. And there are schools in the area and instructors that do have experience working through the foreign documents to get you your FAA certified private pilot certificate. And if you wanted more certificates after that, they would help with that as well. So there are requirements. We do have to do like a TSA sign off to do flight training. But
TSA is?
That's the Transportation Security Administration.
Okay.
Yeah, but there is, ever since 9/11, that's something now that flight instructors have to do, is they have to give what's called a TSA endorsement, certifying that you have the proper documents to be flight training in the United States. But again, we know resources that can help you with that. I wonder if Josh at the Fort Worth Flight School.
Yeah, Josh at Fort Worth Flight School might have some advice here. The reason why for this is in 9/11, what happened was the hijackers of all the planes, they came over to a U.S. flight school and trained.
Oh.
They learned how to take off. They learned how to fly.
All here.
That's something that
They didn't learn how to land. They didn't care about landing.
No.
That was a big thing.
And so that shook up everything. And so from that moment on, they introduced, the TSA was actually created in the rubble of 9/11. And all the new documentation for internationals all of a sudden got ramped up. So if you were coming to me right now in 1999, it would have been a lot easier.
Oh, oh man, I should plan since the beginning. The 99.
But yeah, I mean, to be very honest, I used to teach the Chinese students when I was a flight instructor at U.S. Aviation in Denton, but I didn't do any of their paperwork. The school did that for us.
Oh, okay.
So by the time they got to me, they already had their private pilot certificate. They already had their paperwork done, and I did their instrument training and got them partially through their commercial single engine training. But I have resources and people that I know, contacts that we can reach out to help you with that.
Yeah, I think I'll reach out to Josh and see what he says.
I think that would be great because you live in the Fort Worth area, correct? Yeah. See, I think that would be a great option as well.
Yeah, actually, that would be the closest too. But okay, next question.
Next question.
See, it's weird because you don't know what you don't know.
Like for example, I don't know if you know, okay, so I know that internationals and people that lives here, that are here in the U.S. Has, as an international, you have extra steps to follow. But time-wise, is there any difference?
No. There's no difference.
Good question.
Yeah, that's a really good question. The only reason why there would be a difference in the amount of time that it would take is if you were going to a university or a certified school. We call that Part 141 training. They actually decrease the number of hours. And that's usually if you're going to a school full time, a university, accredited type program.
And a lot of the international flight students will do that because they come over here intensive,
it's full time.
It's full time is what they do.
Right. But it doesn't sound like that's what you would want to do. It sounds like you just want to kind of learn on your own pace, not in a school or a university environment where you have that strict curriculum. That's called Part 61. And that's what Josh does at his flight school.
It's how I learned.
It's how I learned.
Now, one thing about the question, your original question is, does it take more time as an international student? It doesn't by book requirements are the same.
Okay.
But what will take longer is probably the language, overcoming that and learn, because you're going to have to learn a new language, whereas a lot of the domestic people, they don't have to learn a new language. But
does the institute evaluate those things? Because I don't know. I know when you come here to the U.S. to study, for example, you need to prove that your English is advanced in order for, it has to have a certain level to, be educated here. So is it the same with flight schools here?
That's not the flight school's requirement. A lot of times that'll be the country that's sending that person. They'll say you have to be able to qualify for us to send you to the United States. You have to be this proficient in English.
They'll give them exams and tests, and then when they come. And they, because a lot of times it's just very basic, very, very, very basic.
Okay.
And when they come here, they'll have people at the flight school that help them with English as well, train them.
Yeah, and so I don't think it will take you much. So if we took you and somebody from the U.S. and you guys trained together, I think that it wouldn't take you hardly any longer than this person. So nominal as far as you just have to, it's going to take you a little bit more work on the language side. That's all.
Okay.
But your English is very good. I do not think you are going to have that much issue learning. I don't think you're going to have any more issues learning aviation English than the flight students that I've worked with in the past that they're English proficient. English is their first language, but they're coming into aviation brand new. It's a lot of information.
So are you saying that some of the students that you taught at your 141, their English is not as proficient as Steph's?
Yes.
Okay, so that may make you feel better.
Yes.
So
in a way, yes.
There were students that came to me that were held back a little bit in their training because they had trouble with English just as basic English, and then they had trouble translating it to aviation. For example, I had a student, and I loved all my students, but this guy was really, really struggling. We were going to an airport in Oklahoma, and it was a towered airport, and they said you need to make a left downwind for the runway, and he didn't understand, and he turned right.
That's my biggest fear, probably.
I'm going to tell you right now that happens even with that happens with even English speaking people. Like,
Oh, I've made bonehead mistakes just like that.
it absolutely happens, but that doesn't mean that you. But he couldn't comprehend. He literally had trouble understanding the difference between left and right. And so, yeah, I mean, it's going to happen. We all make mistakes at all levels of piloting, from student pilots to professional pilots. But so far, if I were evaluating you, if I had to document whether you were English proficient right now, I would say yes.
And I would say that it's going to be difficult at the beginning, but it gets better.
It does get better. The more you practice it, the more you use it, the more you watch on YouTube, the more videos you edit for.
Well, and that goes to anybody, international or national. Learning to talk to on the radios is one of the things that's hardest for anybody, including me.
Oh, I was terrified. Did not want to talk on the radio.
And we are English as our first language, and we were terrified. So, but not to scare you. It gets better.
It's normal, is what he's saying, is that it's totally normal and that it does get better.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Next.
Yeah.
What else?
Let me check. I have one in my mind, but like how much does it cost? Like, I know. Okay, so like I know it costs. It has its cost, but like, yeah, how much is, like, in general, like, just to learn the basics if you wanna just go and fly, like, just basic stuff.
So, it depends. If you have the money and the time now, and you can condense your training to, I would say, within about 6 months, that is where you're going to get the most bang for your buck. Because what happens is people will go and they'll do one lesson a week or one lesson every 2 weeks, and so you're going long spans of time without learning, without flying. So now you have to go back and repeat things on your next lesson. So you're kind of like, you're always 2 steps forward, 1 step backwards if you do it that way, versus if you're able to get your training a little bit more condensed and you're flying 3 times a week, for example.
Okay.
Now you're going, 3 steps forward and like no steps backward.
Yeah, it's a force multiplier, because what happens is flying is what we call a very perishable skill. So perishable, it fades away real quickly. Oh. So if I haven't flown, even with all the flying I do, if I haven't flown in a couple of months, I'm going to not remember a lot of stuff. And so the FAA has currency requirements for you to but all that relates to training. So if you go, let's take Christy's example. If you only do it once a week, well, then you are scheduled today and now you can't fly.
Yeah,
so now you're going 2 weeks. That lesson 2 weeks from now will probably be almost a full repeat of the lesson you had before.
So now you're just paying for that lesson and the flight instructor
And it's going to
and the
take that
fuel.
much longer and everything else. So going back to cost, it used to be when I got my private pilot certificate or license. People get upset when you say license, but it's okay. The FAA actually says license in some of their documents.
Right.
But anyway, if you go for your private pilot's certificate, 8 years ago it was $7,000 to $10,000 total at a 2 or 3 times a week pace. If nowadays it's more like 10 to 15 or even 17,000. So it's gone up a lot because of everything, but
Inflation, yada yada.
so 10 to 17,000 is probably the window, depending on how fast and how quickly it goes for you and everything else.
The quicker you can get your certificate, though, the less expensive it'll be. The more that you can fly, the more time that you can commit to it, the
faster.
The easier it's
cheaper.
going to be. It's going to be easier, it's going to be faster, and it's going to be less expensive because you're not repeating lessons now.
Okay. So
I got mine done in 5.5 months, and that was flying like 3 times a week or, whenever I could. And on the day, every day, I had my nose in a book or a YouTube video or studying for the written exam. If it was a day like today and I was supposed to fly, I would be, as soon as I got off work, I'd be spending 2 hours at home studying for the written exam.
Oh, okay.
So I did 6 months, and I was flying 2 times a week, roughly. So that's kind of an idea to give you of what it would take.
Okay. And another thing is like, because as I told you before, I never thought that I will have this opportunity, like with you.
Yeah.
Thank you, actually. But knowing that, like, and I know that I'm not gonna, go and be an airline pilot next
Right.
day.
Yeah.
But like, daily life is like, it's not a high priority, right? So
Right.
it's like, it will be like a hobby kind of thing or
Right.
stuff like that. So when you take that decision, based on that, how did you take the decision to go and get into aviation?
Spend that kind of money to get into
exactly.
aviation. Yeah. So, everybody's story is different. Like Christy would probably agree with, and you should correct me if I'm wrong, would agree that she entered it. I'm not going to be an airline pilot. I'm just because I want to fly. And that came along as she, because I remember when we started the channel, Christy, we did an episode of you trying to decide, where you were going to go, even if it was going to be airlines.
I had always dreamed of being an airline pilot, but it seemed like a pipe dream. I was one of those people where I was like, I'm never going to do that. But you know what would be cool?
I guess it was. You did start private training and knowing you were going to go far.
Well, I wanted to go far. I just didn't know exactly what far looked
that's
like.
what it was.
So it was, I got my private. And then when I got my private, I was like, oh my gosh, like they gave me a pilot's license or whatever, like I can actually fly airplanes. And then it was like, okay, so let's just work on the instrument now. I kind of took it one step at a time.
But to go back to your question, the investment for something that's going to be a hobby, that's really the question.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is it worth the investment for what's going to be a hobby? So for me, it was a little bit different in that my family really is not into aviation. It's not something I can do as a hobby. I had to do it because of business. And so what happened is 10 years ago with the drone craze starting to happen, people started using drones in my business for commercial videos. And the FAA started making a lot of noise about, hey, if you're flying a drone for money, you need to have a commercial pilot's license. And that was a commercial pilot's license. We talked about a private pilot being 10 to 17,000. To get to your commercial, you're probably at 60,000, and you're probably more than a year in, most likely. So it was unrealistic for a drone pilot at a small mom and pop video company was going to do that. So, and the court sided with the people, and the FAA came out with us. They said, we're going to have a drone license. We're not ready yet. And so the courts told them, well, you need to have something in between. And so they said, okay, right away, if somebody will get any level of pilot's license and apply for an exemption from the commercial rule, it was called the 333 exemption, and we grant that to you, then you can fly drones professionally. So it was an excuse for me. Now it looked like a business thing. Be able to fly drones commercially, I need to go get my pilot's license. You see?
Okay, that was your motivation. Like
Yes,
okay.
Exactly. And so it's a little different than, say, Chrissy's or, everybody's got their own story.
Exactly.
Well, I've got a good example that kind of relates to what you're talking about. I've always thought it would be really cool to get my seaplane rating.
Right.
I would love to do that.
What is CP?
It's
A plane on floats?
Airplane on floats. So an airplane in the water.
It lands in the water?
Right.
Okay.
And so it literally lands in the sea. It lands and takes off on water.
Okay.
I have always loved seaplanes. And I looked into it, and it would cost probably around $5,000 or so to get my seaplane rating. But the question is, what am I ever going to do with that, right?
It'd be just for fun.
It would be a frivolous rating because I'm never going to get to use it, honestly.
And so by the time you do use it, you're out of currency.
Correct.
Yeah.
My gosh.
Yeah, exactly. And so, because I looked at it, there's no place around that I can rent a seaplane from, even just to maintain currency. So what we did instead was when Kevin and I went to Alaska a couple of years ago, we went up to Talkeetna, and I paid for a quote unquote seaplane discovery flight. And we went and flew seaplanes with a flight instructor. And that was amazing. And I would definitely do that again, but I just don't know if I could get, again, it would just be one of those frivolous things if I did get it.
Well,
but I would go into it knowing it would be frivolous.
I probably shouldn't tell you this, but Brian Brandt from Colton Mortgage and I, we all went through an intensive get our multi-engine commercial add-on. We've been talking about going for our seaplane rating like that.
I want to do that. I would love to do that.
We'll have to include you then, I guess.
Yeah, I would really like to do
But you'd have to get off work, and that's not going to happen because it's not Oshkosh.
Well, we'll see.
Okay,
that's something that you and I could talk about on the
I don't mean to hijack
But either way,
conversation.
but the question, for you is, what are you going to use your private pilot certificate for? Is it going to be one of those things where I get my private and now I have it? I can say I did it, which is a huge accomplishment. And I 100% encourage you to do that if that's what you want to do. But the question is, what would you want to do with it after that?
Exactly.
And there are options. You could join a flying club, and there are several flying clubs in the area.
What do you do in a flight club?
So,
I mean, that's probably
Good
the
question.
first one.
so you build community with other pilots that also have their private pilot certificate or higher.
Describe what a flying club is.
Right. So that's what I'm saying.
Okay.
That's what I'm talking about. It's a community of pilots that the flying club either has airplanes that they buy, or they have airplanes that are leased to the flying club. And the members of the flying club have access to go rent the airplanes and just go fly. And so I'm the president of a flying club. Yeah. And that's what we do. We have a community of pilots who they're like you. They don't fly for business. They just have private pilot certificate. I mean, we have professional pilots in our club as well, but plenty of people like you where they work a 9-to-5 job. They got their private pilot certificate however long ago, and they just want a community to keep their pilot certification,
and to go enjoy flying.
Yeah, they want to go. They want to maybe grab another club member and go fly to go do $100 hamburger flight somewhere, and that's where you go fly for lunch somewhere.
On the way to Phoenix, we stopped in New Mexico and took the courtesy car.
Oh, you did like a $10,000 hamburger.
Yeah,
then.
we did.
Okay.
So she got to experience, but that was really fun, wasn't it? That restaurant that we stopped at, and
I was like, wait, can you get like when we went to the airport and then it said, are we going to take this car? Yeah, just take it. It's like, but what about the people? I don't know. You don't,
Nope.
you just take the car and then you just go around the town. Is that what the flight club?
that's what it's all like everywhere.
So it's not, the flying club doesn't have a car, but if you take one of the flying club airplanes and you go to like Bridgeport, for example, they have a courtesy car there, and you literally just sign out the courtesy car and you go take it into town and go have lunch.
And I'll give you an example. So, once a month, I'm shooting the aerials of for our construction client. So I went this morning in Lola. And last month, Lola was in the shop, so I didn't have a plane. So I reached out to one of our mutual friends that's in Christie's Flying Club, and he checked out a plane, and I went up with him, and we did the run, the aerial photos in that plane, which happened to be Christie's plane.
Yeah. So I was like, I guess, Dan, can you use it to take pictures with?
But the other guy was the one who checked it out. I couldn't just do it because I'm not a part of the flying club. But
yeah.
Oh, okay.
But either way, so just stuff like that. Like, we have plenty of people that are in your situation that, they're not professional pilots. They don't own airplanes. They don't really have a broader mission like Dan or I had for learning to fly, but they just love airplanes. They love flying, and this is what they want to do with it.
Okay. I think now that you're talking about, listening your stories, it's like to get full on this decision, I think you need to find first your motivation.
Yes.
So if that really is very big, strong enough to get into it, So I still in that process of, like finding if that is a like motivation. That's why I wanna do the discovery flight.
Yes.
Exactly.
And see if I like it more.
Yep.
I like it more. Yeah, that's one of the things that I. But what else about the flying club? Like, I mean, is there anything else like? Because if
Just
I don't
like
have a
that.
plan, okay, I have the license, or if I decided to go into this, it's like, okay, you don't have an airplane, and probably that will even be my priority right now,
Right.
to get a plane.
Well,
So
you
it's
don't
like-
have to. So I'll tell you this, that when I got my private pilot's license, I did not have an airplane. So what I did is I would rent the school that I just gotten my license from.
Yes.
I would rent their plane and go take my son out for a flight or whatever. So you there are places that you can rent planes, but you have to. It's a little trickier, and there's a lot of asterisks on that. But
Okay.
and some schools that, like the school that I had gone through, that I rented a plane, about a year or two later they stopped doing that for renting because they didn't have enough planes available for their lessons because people were just taking them and going. And so that's why flying clubs have become really big, and and there's a lot of flying clubs around, believe it or not.
Yeah, mine just happens to be out of Denton, but I know that there are some in the Fort Worth area as well. I don't know if Josh rents his airplanes out at his flight
I don't
school.
know. See, every school will be different, so I don't know.
Every school's a little bit different because obviously you need airplanes available to train people in. So,
But yeah, and I would recommend Christy, when you take her for the Discovery flight, you guys should go to Bridgeport, get a courtesy car, go to the cafe in town.
oh yeah,
or
we
something
should.
like that.
So we should definitely plan
She
our
should get the
Discovery.
whole GA experience.
Since we have to reschedule our Discovery flight after.
I tell you what, I want to pay for lunch for the two of you, so
Oh my
go
gosh.
somewhere. So the lunch will be on
Thank
me.
you, boss.
Awesome. So let's go get lobster.
Oh wait! Now you're flying to Corpus or
Yeah,
something.
I
Exactly. We're doing $1,000 hamburger now.
Yeah.
No.
I'm kidding. Dan, we would never do that. We'll go get a hamburger.
Whataburger is what I'm talking about.
No, we'll go somewhere. I have some places that we could go, but yeah, we'll go do the full experience. But yeah, the other thing that I do want to mention though is, have you looked at getting your medical certificate?
Oh, good point.
I don't know how it is. I don't know how it works. I have no idea.
We know a couple of aviation medical examiners that we can put you in touch with, but that's going to be really, really important that you do very early on. That should be one of the first steps that you do.
After Discovery flight.
Yeah, just to make sure that you even qualify, because there are some disqualifying things if you have anything in your medical past. You know what I mean? So you just want to make sure that you can qualify for it, because you don't want to go through all that training and then realize, I can't even qualify.
Like what kind of things can you find in a medical exam like that for flying?
Your eyesight.
Yeah.
Like
well,
in like a
it's not even
driver's license kind of thing, like green, red.
They just need to make sure that it's correctable to 2020. That's it.
Okay.
So yeah, I mean, wearing glasses is fine for, and actually there's different levels of medical certificates.
Certifications, yeah.
And but what we're saying is that there's been people who want to become an airline pilot, right? And so there's 3 different levels of medical certification.
Okay.
They get just the very simplest level of medical certification because you have to have that to solo. So you can do the first part of your training, but at some point you have to have that to be able to solo a medical.
Okay.
So what happens is they get the bare minimum and they go through their private lessons. They spend $18,000 and they spend even more to get their instrument. Then they spend even more to get their commercial pilot's license. And then they try to go for their medical for their airline pilot, the highest level, and they don't qualify. Now all that money is wasted and gone.
And is why that information, if you are in an academy, why that information you don't get it from there?
Oh, the academy would tell
They
you.
do. They give it to you.
They do.
a lot of times too, what people will do is they'll go get their, like he was saying, they'll
They
go get
do
their
it backwards?
Well, they get their third class medical and then they don't get their first class medical until later on in their training. So when I did my training very early on, I got my first class medical to make sure. Like once I started getting into commercial training, I was like, okay, this is serious. Like I really want to be a professional pilot now. Let me go get my first class medical and just make sure everything's good.
Okay.
Because every class of medical, so like a third class is kind of like your basic, it's your basic medical for like a private pilot. Second class is for your commercial pilot. First class is like your airline pilot, And so I went and got my first class. I want to make sure I can make it all the way. And so that's what I did.
Okay.
And so I've held a first class medical since shortly after getting my instrument rating to make sure I could do that. But for you may not want to go that professional route. Just get your
I've
third
never gotten a
class.
first class medical because I'm not going that route. So
Okay.
I do have a second class because I'm doing commercial work. But, it's for me, it's not relevant.
It's like, okay, so the only reference that I have here for, license stuff like that is just like doing my driver's license test or stuff like that. And
Right.
So
It's a little
is
like
it this-
that.
Is
Kind
it
of, yeah,
kind
it's
of
kind
similar?
of like that. Yeah, they just make
Yeah,
sure that you're not.
they're gonna cover your eye, read the sign. They're gonna look at pee in this cup. They're gonna take a look at that. So
They make you look at a book and make sure don't have like color blindness, or maybe that's.
I don't
part of the-
remember that.
Oh, okay. Maybe that's part of the
may
first
be-
class
That's a
medical
first
then.
class.
Okay.
I never did
Okay.
that. So, trying to think what else. Just standard, your blood pressure, all that kind of stuff. They look at your medications are the big killer for pilots.
Okay, if you take any pills or, medicine or
Yeah.
something like that. Okay.
Yeah, depending on what it is. Not everything
No,
disqualifies
like
you.
I,
But
I take some prescriptions, and they don't affect the medical.
Okay.
But there's a lot of people. A classic example is there's a lot of people that got prescribed for ADHD and ADD, attention deficit disorder, while they're growing up, and they were on Ritalin or whatever, and and the FAA doesn't like that, and
well, there's a new pathway for that.
there is a
though.
new pathway.
There is a
and
new
that's-
pathway. That's
but that was
different.
one that caused many a pilot to not be able to get their medical. But now they're working on that, and they're actually working on a lot of different things. The medical stuff is being in the process of being redone, and it's already improved just over the last 8 years with basic med and all that, which I won't get into the weeds on. But
Right. Basically, if you're currently on medication for for anything, you're definitely going to want to talk to your aviation medical examiner about those things.
and I have a really good guy, and Christy does too, and so we can point you in the right direction there.
Yeah,
I don't
absolutely.
taking any medication, so I'm fine.
Yeah, I think
Okay.
you're gonna be fine.
Yeah, but I mean, yeah, that's really it. That's a lot of information, but that's enough to at least get you started. We've talked kind of about the financial impact, the discovery flight, the medical, and then of course we've got some contacts with the aviation medical examiner and even a flight school in the area if you find that you're really serious about it.
And the last things that I would say to it, after you do your discovery flight and you decide this was something you want to do, you will have to do some initial investments. You'd have to invest in a headset. You have to invest in some books for the learning, and a logbook where you log everything down. So there will be some costs associated right at the very get-go. But after that, then you're off and running.
Yeah, and then the final thought from me is find community. It really, really helps to have other people to talk to who are going through this process. There's some really great Facebook pages and different online forum communities and stuff like
That's
that.
how Christy and I met. Was
for
Facebook.
example, I just met you guys. Through my job. But what about the people that doesn't have that opportunity? Like they don't have anybody.
Yeah, Dan and I met
How-
through
how
the
do
Facebook
Christy
page.
and I met on Facebook.
Okay, you just have to.
There's a North
and
Texas aviation Facebook group. And so it was just all North Texas people. And then there's other things like that all around everywhere. There's social media will have just, localized groups and different things. And worst case, let's say you don't even have a computer or an internet connection.
Yeah.
You can drive down to the local airport and there's always going to be people hanging, and you can just start talking to people and stuff like that.
What can you ask in an airport? Because it's like
You
I
can
never
walk in and you go,
Hey, I'm looking for community.
I'm new and I don't know what my next step is. everybody in aviation wants to help.
Oh my gosh. So true story. When I was a student pilot, I was driving around Northwest Regional and I just saw this guy in the most beautiful Cardinal I've ever seen. And he was just sitting in his hangar, just hanging out, drinking a soda. And I thought, hey, I'm going to go talk to this guy. So I did. I drove up and I said, I'm a student pilot. I just started learning to fly. I've got like 8 hours. You have a beautiful airplane. We started talking and we wound up taking a flight to Bridgeport. Yeah, like seriously, like people are so enthusiastic about flying and so excited about the community that aviation brings that they're willing to share it with other people. That's the one really great thing. I think it's somewhat unique.
I agree. The motorcycle community is somewhat like that, but the aviation, and maybe it's our own, that we all share the high risk of flying. But the fact that we all kind of are in that world brings us all together. And so there's a very tight community, and you can walk up to anybody at an airport that's working on their plane, like Chrissy's saying, and start talking with them. And that's not unusual.
That's not, it's not unusual.
It's very normal
inside of aviation. Outside of aviation, I don't, maybe, but yeah, within our community, it's amazing. So, but Dan and I've got some experience in this, and we can definitely point you in the right direction. And honestly, that is a huge thing that you've got going for you.
So for those, like Steph was bringing up, for those that aren't sitting here with me and Christy, check out social media for something near you. Call local airports and talk to the guys that hang out there, the ladies that hang out there, and get yourself just start diving in. People will welcome you. They will want to talk with you. So don't be afraid of that, and go and explore.
Yeah, absolutely. We're glad to have you as part of the community.
No, well, thank you for
Thanks,
welcoming
Steph,
me.
for coming. All right. And thank you guys for listening. And don't forget our sponsors. We've got Flying Eyes, the best glasses you can have under headsets and helmets. FlyingEyesOptics.com. Use our discount code, taking off, all caps, one word, for 10% off. Colton Mortgage, ColtonTakingOff.com. Marshall Protective Services, personal protection elevated at MPSProtects.com. 67 Designs, 67D.com. They make the best mounts for your cameras, for your phones, in your car, plane, or boat even. Clemens Insurance, ClemensInsurance.net. Jerry has indeed saved me a lot of money on my insurance. And Z-Vision, XEVision.com, the brightest landing and taxi lights out there. All right. I did it, Chrissy. I got them all.
You got them all. I'm proud of you.
All right. We'll see you guys next time on the Taking Off podcast. I think our camera died.
It did. It died a long time ago.
Well, I watched it earlier, so I guess you'll have been looking at pictures. So there we go. Bye, everybody.
We'll loop it back in.